Okay, Shalom, this is Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights and the World Alliance of Karaim. And I'd like to speak about an issue that I've spoken about, I think, once explicitly before, and probably referenced a bunch of times because we just need to change lanes. And that's the idea of what I would call advisory councils. And let me explain exactly what I mean, because that's kind of a general term. I'm referring to a very specific situation. What I mean by that is that, well, let me give a little bit of background, okay? There's this constant tug of war, I would say, between two definitions of what a nation is, of what a country is, okay? On the one hand, we have the definition of a nation as basically a bloodline, a race. That's a loaded term these days, but that's essentially what we're talking about. Okay, a nation is the extended family clan of a small group that originally started as a family or even a single individual. Right? That's what the nation of Israel is. That's why it's called the nation of Israel. Israel was Jacob, and the nation of Israel are the descendants of Jacob and all those who have joined themselves to the people of Israel, who are known as Gerim. But the core of the nation are the physical bloodline descendants of Jacob, and that is the traditional definition of a nation. You start with an individual, or maybe a small group of individuals. They become prosperous, they expand into a family, an extended family, a clan. Then eventually they expand into multiple clans, right? Just like in Israel you had the multiple tribes, the 12 tribes, or the 13 tribes, if you consider the two sons of Yosef to be individual tribes. And this is how a nation develops. And all of the members, traditionally all of the members of a nation are related to each other by bloodline. Very specifically, they're related to each other by patrilineal bloodline. They can all trace their ancestry through the father's line back to a single individual, or maybe a small group of individuals, but ultimately to a single individual, right? In the case of the nation of Israel, that individual is Jacob, is Israel. In the case of, let's say, Rome, maybe it can be traced back to Rome, to Romus and Romulus, or whatever the legend is of the founding of Rome. And each nation may have its own legend, but the bottom line is that generally they are extended family clans. They are related bloodlines. Okay. Now, in this modern age, we have a new definition of a nation, which is all of the people who happen to be residents or citizens of a certain area, or all of the people who adhere to a certain ideology without regard to their bloodline, okay, without regard to their patrilineal or even matrilineal bloodline. Okay, the history of this is extensive. I don't claim to be an expert historian. I know some history, I know some science, I know some math. I kind of try to be a jack of all trades, but I think the origins are in the European Enlightenment, the French Enlightenment, Rousseau, and the idea that a nation is made up of its citizens, regardless of what their entities are. The idea that Jews were not a separate nation, but they were just they were just citizens of France or Germany, of the Mosaic persuasion, or of the Mosaic belief system. So that's the new modern progressive liberal definition of a nation, and it flies directly in contrast with the traditional definition of a nation, which is an extended bloodline related clan. Well, what's the structure that Yehovah wants? Because in a lot of videos I've spoken a fair amount about this idea of Yehovah setting up a certain structure in the world, which we would call order, or which we would call good, right? Because any structure he sets up is by definition good, and humanity having the ability either to alter that structure or destroy the structure altogether by blurring distinctions, and that would be that would be by definition evil or bad, because you're going against the will of Yehovah. So Yehovah build structure. Okay, you look at the trees, you look at the sky, you look at the clouds, you look at the ground, you look at the cycle of the rain, being absorbed into the atmosphere. You look at the eyeball, you look at anything that Yehovah has created, and you will see structure. You will see very detailed, wise, beyond our ability to even comprehend, structure that is so wise and so detailed and so beautiful and just so breathtaking we just look at it in awe, and we try to understand it and pick it apart. Maybe we can get little pieces of it here and there, but the structure is so complex and so full of wisdom and so full of understanding that it's really beyond our ability to understand. As it says in Ecclesiastes, Yehovah has made the world so wonderful that no one can understand it from its beginning to its end. Really, Yehovah's ways are above us. We're just students kind of trying to pick at whatever we can try to understand of his ways. So getting back to the main point, there's a structure that Yehovah has built into the world, and any attempt to alter that structure or blur the distinctions between that structure is by definition evil. Now, we're given free will as human beings. We're given free will, so we can either choose to follow and support that structure and be loyal servants, be loyal sons of Yehovah, or we can decide that we don't like it. It doesn't fit in with our perception of the way the world should be. We don't like being controlled. We have other rebellious tendencies. We want to be the center of attention. All the things that stir people to be evil and ultimately to rebel against Yehovah. And then you can go ahead and make your own, try to make your own world, which you think you're going to make a world that's better than Yehovah's, but of course that could never happen. That's just the epitome of stupidity and ignorance and arrogance. So what you end up doing is you end up causing a lot of destruction in the world with maybe even good intentions. Maybe you have good intentions, but you don't believe in a creator, and you've not humbled yourself before that creator, so you make a mess of things. You start messing with systems that are far too complex for you to understand, when you should have approached them with humility and tried to, in any way possible, understand what Yehovah wants and follow that system. Okay, so how does all this relate back to the nations? Okay, it's my opinion, and I think it's strongly backed up by the Torah, that the idea of a nation is the first conception of a nation, which means an extended family, an extended clan, a bloodline of related people who are cousins, who are first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, even 10th cousins, but that have a blood relationship, and they spread out on a certain land, or they conquer a certain land, or they're given a certain land by Yehovah, if you want to get, bring divine intervention into it, and that is and that is the nation living on their land. And that is certainly the case with Israel. And any attempts to say that's not, I think, are a big mistake. Now, the modern liberal vogue is to take the second conception of a nation, shall we say the French Enlightenment or the European Enlightenment conception of a nation, which is a nation or a country is just made up of all the citizens that live there and adhere to the philosophy of that nation. So the classic example of this new modern, quote-unquote, progressive form of a nation would be the United States of America, right? At least in its modern conception. 200 years ago, maybe it wasn't that way, but in its modern conception, the concept of the United States of America is that anyone who lives in the United States of America, who is a citizen of the United States of America, regardless of their bloodline, they can be black, they can be white, they can be Hispanic, they can be Muslim, they can be Christian, they can be Jewish, they could be, anything, Chinese, Asian, Indian, whatever, that if they are citizens of the United States and they are full-fledged citizens, they are an integral and full part of the nation known as the United States of America. Okay, it's my opinion that this formulation of a nation is flawed at its very basis. It will never work. It has never worked, and it can never work. When you take people and plunk them together, people with vastly different backgrounds, vastly different cultures, vastly different bloodlines. Okay, each bloodline has its has its strengths and its weaknesses, and you plop them all together and you try to force them to live as a single nation, it won't work. It will break apart. Okay, and I believe in the book of Daniel it speaks about one of Daniel's dreams, speaking about how there's a nation that's foot is made of clay, and it cannot hold itself together. Okay, now I don't claim to know what the book of Daniel means, and anyone who claims to know what the book of Daniel, a lot of this stuff in the book of Daniel means, I think is mistaken, because I think that we really don't know. There's a lot of speculation. People will go to and fro and make themselves white, as it says in the book of Daniel, trying to figure out the meaning of these words, but it's locked up until the end of times. However, I'm just using that as kind of a starting point, or as a launch pad to show that this idea of a nation being made up of many different nations that cannot be held together is exactly what we have in a country such as the United States of America, and it's ultimately doomed to fail. Okay, the only way that there can be a consistent good society is when there's an extended bloodline, because when there's an extended bloodline, everything's all in the family. There's more of an element of trust. There's more of an element of I've wronged you, then it's still in the family, so it can be resolved in a much more peaceful and straightforward way. Whereas if you have, let's say in the United States, a black person wrongs a white person, or a white person wrongs a black person, there's no sense of family there. There's no sense of two people who are able to work it out as if they were extended family. No, there's just this clan hurt a member of this clan, hurt a member of that clan, and a member of that clan hurt a member of this clan. So you have these basic factions fighting for supremacy within the United States of America. And I've been saying for years that the blacks, under the guise of equality, are not really fighting for equality in the United States. That's bullshit. That's a complete lie. What they're fighting for is supremacy, just like they were doing the same in South Africa. What they want is, they want their clan to be the ruling clan. The Hispanics want their clan to be the ruling clan. Let's say the women or the feminists want their clan to be the ruling clan. Each clan is fighting for supremacy in this country, in the United States of America, and they do it under the guise of equality, but that's not really what they want. There are always exceptions. I mean, there are some people from all these groups who just want equality, but I really think it's basically clan warfare, as the United States or American parlance may be a race war. That's really what it is, and it may erupt. I think it will erupt someday into an outright race war, despite the fact that many people are trying to calm the fires. I think that's ultimately what it's going to erupt into. Okay, how does all this relate to the nation of Israel? The nation of Israel, I believe, is meant first and foremost, as I'd mentioned, to be the extended family clan, the extended patrilineal bloodline of the descendants of Jacob. Anyone who is not a descended from the patrilineal bloodline, the fatherly descent line of Jacob himself, is not at the core of Israel. Yes, they can be gerim, they can join onto the nation as adopted sons and daughters. Okay, really adopted sons, because the whole idea of being a ger, I don't even really think applies to women. It's really more what a man does. He comes and he leaves, he breaks himself off from the branch of the nation he was born into, and he attaches himself like a graft onto the nation of Israel, onto the patrilineal branch of the nation of Israel. And these are adopted children, just as a family can have their own bloodline children and can have their own adopted children. But just as in such a family, just as the parents may love all of the children, the bottom line is that probably there's a closer connection, or there's a closer feel to one's own flesh and blood than there is to any adopted children. And that, I think, is represented in the Torah, and is represented in the idea of a ger, whereby a ger can join the nation of Israel, but he retains the status of a ger. He retains the status always, and all his descendants retain the status of an adopted son, rather than a bloodline relative, rather than a blood relative. And it's reflected in various laws within the Torah, which I'm not going to get into right now. I'll just give one example. For instance, the ger does not have a parcel in the land of Israel. It does say that in the end of the days he will, but in the Torah, only a bloodline descendant of Jacob has a parcel, has an inheritance in the land of Israel. Okay, so what do I want to say? I want to say that this whole idea, this whole modern liberal notion, progressive notion of defining a nation not as an extended clan, as an extended bloodline, is in opposition to, in my opinion, the way that Yehovah laid out the structure of the world, the way that Yehovah explains it or writes it into the Torah, which is not some magical document, but it's just an explanation of the way he sees things and transmits those ideas to humanity. And we see very clearly how important bloodline, specifically patrilineal bloodline, is. So when these modern progressive nations come along and speak about, a country being made up of all the citizens that live within it and everybody's equal and everyone has the same status, this is, in my opinion, this is an attempt to rebel against the ways of the Creator, an attempt to rebel against Yehovah, and to use one's own desires to control, to be arrogant, maybe to be, to be on top rather than on the bottom, to create a structure which is blurring the distinctions, because each people should belong to its own nation, their own bloodline nation. Okay, and to blur this distinction and to make this false reality of a country whereby you have a whole bunch of different bloodlines all squashed together, which hopefully somehow are going to be bound together by some kind of ideology like the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence. And I don't think this is going to work. This will all fall apart in the end, just as Daniel speaks about the statue with the clay feet that cannot that crumble because it cannot be held together. Okay, so what did I originally want to speak about? I wanted to originally speak about what I called advisory councils, and I'll now be more explicit. This is an idea I have for the United States of America. Let me say that I do not consider myself an American. Yes, I have an American citizenship. I was born in the United States of America. I grew up in the United States of America. I am temporarily in the United States of America right now. But at the end of the day, this is not my country. This is not my nation. This is not my people. My country is Israel. My nation is the nation of Israel. My people are the people of Israel. My land is the land of Israel. And ultimately, that's all I care about at the end of the day. But since I do like to see the structure of Yehovah, or what I perceive to be the structure of Yehovah, put into effect anywhere it can within the world, since Yehovah is king and God over the entire world, my advice to the United States would be that since this country was founded by white Northern Europeans, specifically Englishmen, okay, people from Great Britain, and perhaps by extension maybe the surrounding areas, the Netherlands, and maybe other Northern Europeans, and then there was at first a great wave of German immigrants, that these white Northern Europeans who laid down the ideas and the culture for this country need to regain, or should, if they were smart, if they want to save this nation and they want to save the character of this nation, need to regain their prominence over the entire nation of the United States of America. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know. They may win this battle, they may lose this battle. Many of them don't even realize that such a thing should or needs to be done. But in my opinion, if they were smart and wanted to save their nation, that's what they would do. And so how would specifically this work out? And I'll kind of sum up here, and then I'll get into this in another video, because I don't like the videos to ramble on for too long. But basically what should be done is that anyone who is not a bloodline descendant of the white European race, and I will use the word race, or extended clan, extended family clan, should not be a full-fledged citizen, should basically be a second-class citizen within the United States of America. This would include the blacks, this would include the Jews, of which I am one, and I'm fully aware of that. This would include the Asians, this would include the Indians, this would include the Mexicans, the Hispanics. Anyone who is not of that main bloodline should not have full rights as citizens in this country. Does that mean they can't live here? Well, that's up to the people who would have, who would run the country, or who are the rightful owners of this country, or were in the past the owners of this country, the white European people. Who stays, who goes, how the resources are divvied up, how they're not, okay? But the bottom line is that would be their decision. Now, does that mean that people in this country would be oppressed? No, I'm not talking about some kind of Holocaust or anything along those lines. What I believe is that these other groups, such as the blacks, should have their own advisory council. They should have their own Congress, have a certain amount of autonomy, be allowed to make some decisions to self-govern, but at the same time that their advisory council is beholden to the main council, which would be the Congress, the Senate, or whatever structure set up, which consists only of white European males. The same with the Jews. The Jews would have a limited amount of autonomy, some self-government, but at the end of the day, they would have their own self-government, their own council, which would then answer to the main council of the white European Senate, Congress, or whatever structure is set up. The same with the Asians. So there would be an Asian country. Then that's what it should do. It should retake control of the country and relegate everyone else to having secondary status, not full-fledged citizens, but secondary citizens, and report to the main body of the white European males who founded this country, their race, and report to them as advisory councils. So that's my idea. This has been Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights and the World Alliance of Karaim, and you're welcome to visit us at www.karaiteinsights.com.